Well, hello everyone. Glad you could join us for this lunch and learn on pensions and specifically whether it's better to take an annuity or a lump sum distribution. So this is a question that arises with people who have certain types of pensions. Maybe you work for a government agency or some type of company that still has defined benefit plans. Or maybe you have, an IRA or a 401k, and you're thinking about this issue about whether it's better to take an annuity or leave it as a lump sum. So I'm very happy to be joined today by Bobby Hapanowicz with Hapanowicz Financial. He's the guy that I turn to when I have these questions. In fact, I had a question with a live client, just in the last couple of months. And I was able to get Bobby on the phone while the client was here, and he answered some of their questions about one of these annuity issues. So that was very helpful. And he's going to talk to us about this issue. And this is a forum where we talk about a lot of estate planning issues and how this fits into estate planning. So we'll kind of talk about that and the effect that whether you take an annuity or lump sum, what effect that might have on your estate that you might leave to your heirs. So, Bobby, can you take a minute and introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely, Andy. And first of all, thank you for allowing me to join you here today. Our firms have been working together for a very long time now to provide coordinated, integrated advice for clients because, as we both know, all of these considerations related to financial topics should be made comprehensively, right? Any decision that we make as financial planners has an estate planning consequence, an income tax consequence as well. And that's why we are big on coordination and integration. So the partnership and the relationship with you has been wonderful over the years. But a little bit more about myself and our firm. We're Hapanowicz Financial. We've been in business since 1989. So over 35 years now, and we serve the Western Pennsylvania community. We serve clients across the Eastern Seaboard with comprehensive financial planning and wealth management services. Our view on investment management is investments are the implementation of your financial plan. The most important thing is understanding your goals, your vision for what you want to accomplish in your future. And, that will guide how we implement that plan. And, I know we're here today to talk about one very important consideration related to retirement planning, and that's your pension annuity versus lump sum. Certainly a decision that's very important in your retirement planning and should be made in conjunction with your broader retirement planning.
And Bobby, your firm has a particular expertise in this, and can you kind of go into why that is, how that kind of developed in the development of your firm?
Yeah, absolutely, Andy. So, we've been working with, folks from the company Verizon for a very long time, over 25 years now. We've helped over 1,000 Verizon employees prepare for and transition into retirement over those last 25 years or more. So what's interesting about Verizon is they have one of these legacy pension benefits, at least the union affiliated associates do. Have access to a pension benefit with an annuity option and a lump sum option. And, it's a unique benefit in this day and age. It's a great benefit, but it's unique because, very few of us, very few companies still, very few employees at companies still have access to one of those benefits. And the considerations around one of these benefits are very different than what others may face. At the same time, Andy, as you said, if somebody has an IRA, they have, in heading into retirement, they have a decision to make about how they're going to generate income. Will they do so by investing in the stock and bond markets, or will they annuitize their IRA? It's a very similar decision-making process that, that individual would be going through as well.
Okay. Yeah, great. If somebody's kind of new to this area, kind of start with the basics. Can you explain what what a pension is? What is a pension these days in modern parlance?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. So a pension is a defined benefit plan. It's a type of defined benefit plan, meaning exactly that. There is a defined benefit available to you, the employee, at the end of the day at retirement. So, it might be helpful to explain what a pension or a defined benefit plan is by juxtaposing it, by contrasting it with a 401k plan, which, we're all very familiar with in this day and age. So
And
with a
they call that
401k
a
plan,
defined contribution plan as opposed to a defined benefit plan, right?
Exactly. So in that defined contribution plan, you, the employee, have greater control, right? You are controlling how much contributions you are making to the 401k or defined contribution plan. The employer can provide a matching contribution as well. Many employers do that as a benefit to attract and retain great people. But then the investment management decisions are on you, right? If you invest that 401k well, you might have more assets in retirement to generate income from. The decisions that you make with investing your 401k will impact the amount of assets nest egg you will have in retirement. In a defined benefit plan, it's very different. The amount of benefit that you will receive is a set outcome based off of your years of service with your company and your salary essentially. Some of you might have heard of a concept known as a pension band factor. Different job titles at companies might have a different pension band factor based on your salary that will go into calculating your benefits. So defined benefit plans are funded by employer contributions, not by you, the employee. The employer has the responsibility of managing the assets. And in theory, how well or how poorly the employer manages the assets of the pension plan does not impact the benefit that you are entitled to. If the employer invests the assets very well and there's a surplus in the pension plan, that doesn't impact the amount of income that you'll receive. You'll still receive the same amount of income. At the same time, if investments perform less than the employer expected them to, the employer might have to make an additional contribution to the pension plan that they didn't otherwise foresee themselves making to provide you with that same quote unquote guaranteed benefit that you are entitled to. So that pension is a guaranteed benefit backed by the full faith and credit of your employer, be that a government agency or a private company as well.
Okay, great. And then, so I guess one of the first questions people encounter is when might they be eligible for the pension?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we call that concept retirement eligibility, and oftentimes that retirement eligibility, Andy, is based on your your age, how old you are, and your years of service with the company or employer. There are many pension plans out there that work in this way. For example, the Federal Employee Retirement System, or the FERS benefit, if you're a federal government employee, works this way. The Pennsylvania State Employee Retirement System, PSERS benefit, works this way if you're a teacher or work for the state in another capacity. The Verizon plan, we have a lot of experience with working with Verizon employees and Verizon retirees, works in this way. Other private companies like the automobile makers, Ford, General Motors, etc., their pension plans will work much in this way as well. So retirement eligibility is one concept that you should be thinking about. Another concept that you should be thinking about is when you're eligible for your full benefit. In some cases, a pension plan will have age discounts in place if you are retirement eligible under a certain age. So, for example, the Verizon plan, if you're retirement eligible, meaning that you have enough years of service and enough age added together, if you're retirement eligible under the age of 55, there could be age discounts applied to your pension. So in the Verizon case, there's a 0.5% penalty applied to your benefit for every month under the age of 55 you are. So if you have 29 years of service and you're 50 years old, you're retirement eligible, but there's an age discount that would apply of 30%. You're 60 months shy of your 50th birthday. and there's a 0.5% penalty for every month. So that's significant. Now, with the Verizon plan in particular, if you have 30 years of service, no matter how old you are, there isn't an age discount, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if that Verizon employee waited one more year in that case, before they retired and elected their pension, that 30% discount or penalty on their pension would go away. So, I say that to provide an example of, why it is so important to make sure that you understand your company's pension. That starts by reviewing your summary plan description, making sure that you know the intricacies and the nuances of how your pension works. And that's something that we help a lot of folks with.
Kind of reminds me of this situation with Social Security that you're facing. People have to decide, they're going to take it at 65 or 67 or 70, depending on, what's going to happen with their age and the effect that's going to have on their Social Security indefinitely versus how many more years you might have to put in.
Yeah, exactly. As we know with Social Security, the longer you defer up to age 70, the larger your benefit will be. There are many benefits to that. With these plans, with these pension plans, there can be even more nuance associated with when you are entitled to how much of a benefit. Again, starting with your age and years of service at the time that you're retiring, but there can be other nuances as well. And it's important to understand these nuances because, in many cases, understanding how these things work could be the difference of, tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in retirement.
And the way people find out exactly what the nuances are, typically, how do they go about that if they don't have that information handy?
Right. So you should have access to a benefits portal through your company or employer. Through that benefits portal, you can access your pension plan summary plan description. Any benefit will have a summary plan description. For example, your 401k plan will have a summary plan description. Any plan will have what's known as a summary plan description. It's a 30, 50 page, maybe more document that explains all of the details and all of the nuances for how that benefit will work. And a little bit of light reading, that's something that we'll specialize in and will help a lot of folks, understand all those nuances. We've seen many of them before and, know where to look and know what questions to ask to make sure that you are getting the very most out of the benefits that you've accrued over the course of your career.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, I definitely, if I were an employee, I definitely want you explaining it to me. All right, so let me, for the viewers, what we're going to do next is we're going to talk about the annuity and then the lump sum options, and then talk about the pros and cons of each. So let's start with the annuity option. And Bobby, if you can kind of walk us through how that would work.
Yeah, the annuity option is the standard election option that many folks think about when they think about a pension. The annuity option is exactly that. It's an income stream guaranteed over the course of your lifetime, backed by the full faith and credit of your employer, right? So, that's a monthly income stream that, if it's $1,000 a month today, it'll be $1,000 a month when you're 90. Et cetera, et cetera. So there's, many folks have that comes with a lot of peace of mind for a lot of folks, knowing that they can, expect that same income stream, really, no matter what. You have typically a pension plan will provide the option to name a survivor benefit, right? Typically, that survivor benefit is anywhere from 50% to 100% of the employee's benefit. And what that survivor benefit does is it guarantees a certain benefit through the joint life expectancy of you and a beneficiary, right? Typically, that beneficiary would be a spouse, but in many cases, that beneficiary could be somebody else as well, with certain limitations, right? So, for example, most pension plans won't let a 65-year-old, pick their 3-year-old niece or nephew as their survivor benefit, right? They won't allow that, right? But they may allow you to pick other non-spousal beneficiaries of that plan. So, important to note that, the greater the survivor benefit that you elect, the lower the employee benefit will be at the start of retirement. And that's because the pension is guaranteeing a greater benefit through a joint life expectancy. So that's why that trade-off exists.
And I think there are protections now for the spouse that there didn't used to be. But if somebody's going to take that full amount and not have survivor benefits, the spouse would have to sign off on that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And most of the time, Andy, with a pension lump sum as well, there's a spousal consent form. If you're married and you either elect a lump sum or you elect a single lifetime annuity, there is a spousal election form that will need to be signed in front of a notary to protect both members of the couple. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. So let's turn to the lump sum option. We kind of walk us through that too.
Yeah. So the lump sum is effectively the present value of all of the annuity payments that you would be expected to receive over the course of your life expectancy, right? Mm-hmm. So if we think about the annuity in its simplest form is, based on your salary and based on your years of service with your company. Now, again, the lump sum is the present value of all those future annuity payments. Now we have to consider your age, because your age will factor into your life expectancy. And it's a present value calculation. So we also have to factor in the effective interest rates, right? Interest rates are used as well, because no matter if we're in a high interest rate environment or a lower interest rate environment, whether it's an easier environment to generate income or a harder environment to generate income, that lump sum is designed to provide the same income stream, to the pensioner over the course of their life expectancy. So those are a couple of the key components that go into calculating that lump sum benefit. Folks who elect the lump sum can have that lump sum transferred to a bank account, right? They could take a withdrawal of that benefit. If they do so, that entire lump sum would be taxed today, right? So that might bump you into a much higher tax bracket. Another election option that you would have is rolling those assets into a traditional IRA account. By doing that, you are deferring taxes until you take income later on in retirement. So if you only need a little bit of income from your lump sum at a time, you may benefit from deferring taxes to a later date and not bumping yourself into a much higher tax bracket today. So, more times than not, folks would benefit from rolling assets over to an individual retirement account if they're electing a lump sum benefit.
Okay, I want to follow up on what you said about interest rates. And I think now is a good time to bring up this chart that you've given us about the relationship between interest rates and lump sum benefits. If you can kind of give us some more detail on how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is for folks who have a pension lump sum option. For example, the automobile companies, Ford and GM, Verizon Associates, union affiliated Verizon Associates. This is one of the most common questions that we get, particularly over these last 3 or 4 years, as we've seen a lot of volatility, a lot of change in interest rates. There is that seesaw or inverse relationship between interest rates and lump sums, right? As interest rates go down, lump sum values will tend to go up. And that's what we saw really from about 1982 to 2021 or so, beginning of 2022. So for about 40 years, we were on a trend of interest rates, going down, and we saw lump sums reach, much higher levels, at that time. Since then, we've seen the reverse, right? The Federal Reserve, starting in 2022, the Federal Reserve Bank started increasing interest rates to combat higher inflation. That's one of the levers they can pull to bring inflation down. And, as a result of that, the Federal Reserve's, interest rates that they control will have some impact on pension interest rates. That caused pension interest rates to go up and lump sums to go down. And we have another chart here, Andy, maybe on the next page here, that can show, just how much of a difference. This is an estimate. This isn't exact for anybody. This is just an illustration, an estimate. But you could see the substantial difference that a change in interest rates can have on a change in pension lump sum benefit, right?
Yeah, 2% lump sum would be almost $400,000, but at 6%, it's down to $247,000.
Right.
When people hear about interest rates in the news, it sounds very abstract, but man, it can have real world consequences.
It can. It really can. So during the summer of 2022, I'll speak to the Verizon example in particular. I think it's very illustrative of this topic here. The Verizon associates have a pension whose interest rates are adjusted quarterly. From the end of the second quarter, June of 2022, to the beginning of the third quarter, July, we saw a substantial jump in interest rates, and that caused lump sums to be lowered by, in many cases, six figures.
Yeah.
A substantial difference. Now, that's a very extreme example. That does not happen very often. And, something to keep in mind is that in both of those environments, when interest rates are higher versus when interest rates are lower, that lump sum is meant to generate the same amount of income, right? So let's use an example, right? So let's say you have $1 million worth of bonds yielding 1% income. That would be $10,000 a year in income. Now, let's say you have $1 million of bonds yielding 4%. That's $40,000 of income, right? So you can see how in this example, in a 4% interest rate environment, you would need less of a lump sum to generate the same amount of income as you would in the lower interest rate environment. And that's the why behind, why pension lump sums, move up and down with interest rates. That fluctuation can be really unsettling. We had a lot of conversations with folks who experienced that during that period and since. But, the silver lining and the thing that folks should be keeping in mind is that, in a different interest rate environment, it can be the process of generating income can look much different. And, so if we helped 50 or so folks, let's say we helped 50 people, roughly 50 people in the summer of 2022, consider whether or not they should retire. Well, we incorporated this new information in their comprehensive financial plan, and we're actually able to show them the dollar effect of whether they retired today with a higher lump sum versus if they retired, maybe a couple of years from now with a lower lump sum at that time. So essentially, should I retire early and lock in the higher lump sum, or stay on course and retire with a lower lump sum? Many folks were actually better off still delaying retirement, continuing to earn their salary, continuing to save in their 401k, accruing more of a Social Security benefit. Those factors can offset any changes in lump sum rates as well. So I say that to say that it can be a very emotional time when we see pension lump sums fluctuate, or when we see market volatility, or any one of a number of things that can impact the retirement plan. But our approach is to make data-driven, disciplined decisions, gathering all the facts so that we make well-informed decisions, not emotional decisions, when there's a period like the summer of 2022, for example, when interest rates fluctuated so much. I know that was a lot there, but I think it just shows the benefit of taking a comprehensive financial planning approach to making these decisions, these very important decisions.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it just really highlights the importance of working with an expert, because people trying to figure that out on their own, that'd be really tough.
It certainly can be. And, that retirement decision is irrevocable, right? You can't change it. You can't change when you elect that lump sum. And it's important that, we have all the facts we need to make a good decision leading up to such an important event such as retirement.
Yeah, good. All right. So that's a great segue into talking about annuity options, pros and cons.
Yeah. Boy, again, this is, one of the biggest decisions that many retirees will face, or pre-retirees will face, as they approach that time, right? Um, I'll start by saying that there's no right or wrong between the two. There's no right or wrong. It's not my role as a financial advisor to tell you which option you should take. It's a very personal decision. There are pros and cons to both of these options. And really, it's a matter of which set of pros and cons best fits your situation, best fits your preferences and values. And that can be very personal. It can be very different for two different people who may have very similar situations but have different preferences, right? It can result in a very different decision. So, well, let's start, Andy, by talking about the annuity benefit, perhaps. The key benefit to the annuity is it's a hands-off process, right? If you elect that annuity, you are going to receive the same amount of income every single month through retirement. You have the ability to elect a survivor benefit as well, so that you don't have to worry about that income stream. That's the greatest benefit that folks are attracted to when they elect the annuities, that hands-off approach. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about the fluctuations in the market, right?
That peace of mind. Yeah.
Peace of mind. That's a really good way of saying it. It's the peace of mind. Exactly. Now, with that, peace of mind, that is the benefit of the annuity. The drawback is the lack of control that you have over that benefit, right? When you elect the pension annuity, you have an income stream, but you don't have an asset, right? That asset remains on your employer's balance sheet, meaning that because it is not your asset, you have less control, right? So you cannot, increase or decrease the amount of, income typically once you've started your pension, right? So, if generating inflation hedged income is important to you, if maintaining your purchasing power over time with inflation, keeping up with inflation is important to you, then that is a drawback of the annuity, because every single year you're earning that same amount of income, but the purchasing power of that income is going, is very likely to go down over time as inflation erodes purchasing power, right?
It's what people call being on a fixed income, right? I'm on a fixed income, and if inflation hits, boy, it's going to be tougher.
That's right. And to the extent that you need greater flexibility, right? Let's say you want to go on a vacation one year, or there's a leak in your roof, or your car breaks down, right? You can't take a lump sum out of your annuity, right? As you could if you had an asset on your balance sheet. You cannot do that, right? As it relates to Andy, perhaps more of what you do, your expertise with estate planning, legacy planning, your options are limited for how others could inherit this benefit after you're gone, right? So, for example, again, a spouse, as a common example, could be your survivor beneficiary. But once your spouse is done with using that income, others are not able to inherit that income stream, right? So that's something to consider, right? How dependent are others? Will others be on you for the wealth that you have, created? How important is it to you to leave a legacy? That's another, con that comes with the lack of control with the annuity benefit. One more thing I'll point out with the annuity, again, it's a guarantee backed by the full faith and credit of, your employer. But there are certain protections in place from institutions like the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. But with that said, if your employer, if your company goes bankrupt in retirement, that can impact your pension income stream. Right, your pension is not protected in that case. Maybe a certain amount of it will be guaranteed by the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. It's which is an arm of the federal government, but your entire benefit might not be guaranteed.
Yeah, that's a really important consideration because it's kind of like if you had a stock portfolio and it's all in one stock, if that company doesn't do well, your whole stock portfolio doesn't do well. It's kind of like that with an annuity, right? Because you, like you said, it's backed by the full faith and credit of the company. But if the company doesn't do well, that might be a problem for you, as opposed to having it in a lump sum that you could diversify.
Right, right. And I mean, Andy, we're both from here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and there have been, some, examples of that in the past, unfortunately, that, many of our family members may have been impacted by. Bethlehem Steel is, one, example from, years ago that people are familiar with. And so, it's just something to be aware of. It is something to be aware of. It's one factor contributing to the decision that you have to make. So.
Yeah, and then so I guess that lump sum distributions, that would be sort of the flip side of the things that you just talked about, right?
It would be, right. There's greater responsibility on you. If you take that lump sum and have that transferred to your balance sheet as your asset, you do not have a guaranteed income stream anymore, right? The onus is on you to generate a prudent income stream. The onus is on you to invest those assets well. But with that responsibility of owning the asset comes greater control for you too. So you have greater control over how much income you can generate from the lump sum, or how you can change the income from your lump sum, right? So if you need more one year, less than other year, if you want to go on that vacation, or the car does break down and you need a new car or need to get repairs, you have the ability to take a larger withdrawal, a one-off withdrawal from your lump sum. That's one benefit that folks enjoy with that benefit. And Andy, as you know, with a lump sum, if you roll that over to an IRA account, you have greater control over who the beneficiaries of that IRA could be, right? So a spouse could be a beneficiary, children could be primary or contingent beneficiaries. You can name a charity or a nonprofit as a beneficiary of your IRA. Like we said in the past, a few moments ago here, with the survivor benefit on the annuity, some annuity or pensions do not allow for a 100% survivor beneficiary, right? So, for example, the largest survivor benefit that the Verizon plan will allow is 75%. With the lump sum, if you are generating an income stream from that lump sum and something happens to you, your spouse can continue to take the exact amount of income if they need it, or if they don't need that same income, they could change it higher or lower.
That's kind of where we're getting into kind of an intersection between what you do and what I do. Some people are making these decisions. They might be looking at these questions of, what do I want to get in? What do I need to get in my retirement versus the impact that it might have on my loved ones? So if I'm thinking about my estate planning, what happens when I die? Who gets what? What should I do as far as taking this? A pension as an annuity or a lump sum. And I might be looking at other things like, well, if I got it as an annuity, do I have other investments that are available in case I need something, or an emergency comes up, or I want to take a vacation or whatever?
That's correct, Andy. It's so true, and it's such a great point. It highlights how interrelated all of these areas of your planning are. And, whether or not you take the annuity versus the lump sum has an impact on your legacy planning. Of course, it has an impact on your retirement income planning. It should impact your investment game plan with other assets, whether or not you took an annuity or a lump sum. And of course, it has income tax, consequences today, right? Whether or not you're considering a Roth conversion in retirement, for example, maybe now or over the course of a few years, how much of a fixed income stream you have versus how much of a variable income stream, how flexible you are in generating income, will have an impact on how much Roth conversions are optimal for you, for example. So, all of these things are interrelated, and that's why we encourage a comprehensive approach, right? These decisions, whether I elect Social Security, whether I take my pension annuity or a lump sum, whether I annuitize my other assets or use the stock and bond markets to generate income. These are decisions that shouldn't be made in a vacuum, right? They should be made comprehensively. Your advisors should be coordinated together to make sure that the advice that you are receiving is as efficient and aligned with your goals as possible. It all works together.
Yeah, and what occurs to me as I'm listening to you is that you could probably have two people, with the exact same circumstance, like exact same dollar amount, same age, all that sort of thing. And two people might come to entirely different conclusions just because of who they are and what their preferences are. So you might have somebody that would say, I would much rather have that lump sum because I want to have the control over it. And I like watching what goes on in the stock market. And I would, like to diversify my investments and know that, I can change that in the future if I like to. And somebody else might say, I don't want to have anything to do with any of that stuff. I just want to know I'm getting my check every month.
Exactly. It's so true, Andy. And I'm sure, I know your process is very similar, right? When we, help folks with comprehensive financial planning, I'll share that to me, the most impactful page or component of a financial plan aren't, the numbers, the technical, the strategy. The most important component of the financial plan is the very first page that we present. And that's, our understanding of your vision, goals, and objectives, right? Your vision, your goals, your objectives, what you want to accomplish today in the future, where you want to see yourself and your family personally, professionally, financially. That drives everything else. All the things that we're talking about here, annuity versus lump sum. We talked very briefly about, when to elect Social Security, or do I annuitize or invest in the stock and bond markets? That's all implementation, right? What's important is that we make sure that we understand what that person's vision, goals, and objectives are. And because that's our North Star, right? Everything else is implementation. We want to make sure that we're shooting for the right North Star, not the wrong one. And that leads back to your point. You could have two people with, identical situations, but the right implementation for these two people might be very different for each other, depending on what they want to accomplish.
Yeah, well, you'd be the guy I'd want to talk to if I was facing this situation. So I hope people will take advantage of that and give you a call if they have this situation. I think we covered everything that we had wanted to talk about. Is there anything else you'd want to say to sum up before we open it up for questions?
No, I mean, Andy, I think we covered it, pretty comprehensively. Again, this is one very important decision, but it's one decision within a comprehensive plan. We think that you should be factoring everything in together when you make that decision.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see if we have any questions. I'll check the comments here, see if anything's come in. But while I'm looking at that, are there any frequently asked questions that you get that people might want to know the answers to?
Yeah. One question that we've been getting more recently is, hey, now that interest rates are up, am I better off taking the annuity now versus taking the lump sum? It's a really good question, and it's it's understandable, that why one might consider the decision in that way. But we would actually recommend that you consider a couple of other thoughts as well. There, remember, the lump sum is meant to be the present value of all future annuity payments, right? And the reason why that lump sum is lower today is because it's easier to generate, interest or generate income today, right? Right now we're in an environment where short-term treasuries are yielding 4 to 4.5%. 5 years ago, those same short-term treasuries might have been earning less than 1%, maybe 0.5%, right? So, if you're a retiree with a portfolio that's half bonds yielding 4% versus, half bonds yielding 1%, you can imagine that it's much easier to generate income when that half of your portfolio is yielding 4%. So we don't necessarily think that the decision between the annuity versus the lump sum should be impacted by where interest rates are today, but we think it should be impacted by, what are your preferences? What are your values? What do you want to accomplish with your money, with your benefits? Do you prefer the, control that you get with the lump sum? Are you willing to take on that responsibility of managing that well to get that control? Or is that control not as important to you? Is it more important to you to have the peace of mind or the guarantee that's associated with the annuity? Really, that's what we think should be the key driver of your decision.
Yeah, well, it's great that you're there to give people support during that process and help them through it. I'm looking through the comments and I don't see any questions that have come in. So I guess that means we covered it all and answered people's questions. But I want to just take a minute here and put up on the screen Bobby's contact information. So if you have any other questions or if you're facing this situation and maybe watching this later on YouTube replay or something like that, want to put up his contact information so you can email him or call him at this number. As I said, he's the guy I turn to when I have questions about this, because I know he and his firm have been dealing with these situations for years and answering people's questions about pensions and annuities and lump sums. So he'd definitely be the person that I would call. And Bobby, I just want to take a minute and thank you for your time and coming on here and talking about this important issue.
Thank you, Andy. It's my pleasure. And thank you for including me. It's an important issue and happy to be here to talk about it with you today.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time.